Hello and welcome to 15 Minute Gamer. My name is Tony and this is 15 Minutes with 15 Minute Gamer. This week it is slightly over 15 minutes and it is another talk with somebody else. Today I have two developers. We're going to talk about the game, future plans and about them. It's a very good podcast. Listen to it and check their game out. It's a lot of fun. You'll see links and descriptions to the videos, forums and that sort of thing. Anyway, let's get cracked on. Right, so that's the introduction done, and it's over to you guys. So if you just want to introduce yourself, we have Todd and Matt here. So as Matt was just about to talk there, so we're going to go Todd first. So Todd, go ahead then. If you just introduce yourself, quick bit about who you are and what you've done in the past and what we're working on now.
I'm Todd Curtis. I'm the art half of Mechanical Monocle, who are behind Fractured State. Don't really have a history in games. I kind of came out of college and Matt recruited me to start being his art monkey. And yeah, that's sort of how it's gone.
Nice and short there. Perfect, though.
Yeah, and I'm Matt Kelso. I'm the less talented half of Mechanical Monocle. I make all the bits and bytes go vroom, among other things. But yeah, it's my background actually sort of started as a teenager, kind of messing around and making mods for RTS games, specifically in the Sage engine. So, starting a little bit before that with like Tiberian Sun and Red Alert 2, and then sort of graduating to Command & Conquer Generals, and then the Battle for Middle-earth series, which were on the same engine. So there was sort of a continuation there with a lot of the community. That's kind of where I started and kind of where the inspiration for this project came. It was kind of like, hey, let's make an RTS game, but let's make it in the vein of all the cool stuff that we wanted to do in Sage that we couldn't because they locked things down because it was Electronic Arts and they didn't care about modders at the time. So let's do something with sort of a content creator mindset. And figure out the game behind it afterwards, which seemed to not be the best design decision at the time to get things working the way we wanted them to. But it's good now. We figured it out. It's cool. It only took 5 years, but it's cool. That's
a while. But you did mention some awesome games there. Like some of my earliest memories, I would say Command & Conquer. Mm-hmm. And especially the first one. And I just remember spending so many hours and being amazed by that game when it first came out.
Yeah, it was funny.
Awesome.
My probably my first true multiplayer experience, and this is going to be like heresy, I swear, for people who listen to this, but it was playing the original Red Alert on the PlayStation and playing it with a friend of mine via link cable. So we had two TVs, two PlayStations, and we link cabled them together. So we were basically doing like a hacky crap LAN party with just the two of us, but that we played hours and hours and hours of that, way back in the day.
It was a cracking game. I think I might have played that one as well, on two PCs linked in as well.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that was turning your speakers down so the other person couldn't hear what you were about to do when you were about to attack them. But also when you spend many hours playing that game and you think, oh, I'll send all my forces over, and then the other guys totally beat you with one thing. You leave yourself undefended. But that's what I love about RTS games. It's moments where you can create your own story, and I'm always a person who builds loads of units and then attacks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's all about defense, and then I'll worry about attacking.
I do much the same.
Good. I'm glad I'm not the only person, because sometimes I worry, I think guys must be boring to watch whenever I record them, but I just I'd rather have 10, the Russian method of attack, 10,000 people, which I don't care if they get destroyed or killed. And hopefully it's just one guy who makes it through.
Yeah. And inevitably, especially in those older games where you didn't necessarily have the CPU to push it, you'd be trying to run your guys across the map and the game's running at 5 frames per second trying to handle everything, and it's like the suspense,
Yeah, that's suspenseful too.
I guess some people might call it boring and tedious and whatever, but
Yeah, that's when EA weren't as evil as they are now, and they had some pretty awesome games out there, and they really supported them, and the community was there, and and then I think it was a Command & Conquer 4 maybe where they turned it all terrible.
Yeah, was that the one? Was that
Three?
the one where
I thought
they?
it was 3.
Well, no, 3 they sort of tried to go back to their roots, and it
Oh,
kind
okay.
of worked. Kind of. 4 was the one where it was like the mech based.
That's it. Yes.
Yeah, I didn't really play that one, but I saw the videos for it and basically said, no, that's not Command and Conquer, and skip that one.
So if that's where you drew your inspiration from. Come back to talking about the game. So the game's called Fractured State.
Mm-hmm.
You said they're 5 years in development.
Yeah, sort of. It was one of those. Yeah, it was one of those things where, I mean, part of the problem is we both have day jobs, so it's a weekend warrior kind of thing. And part of it was also, we started way back, kind of not having a vision of what the world was. It was sort of this technical goal of let's build a framework on top of the engine so that people can make their own kind of cool stuff. So it was like, well, the first thing to do, let's build a data pipeline. Let's build a map editor. And let's build these tools so that people can make stuff. And we spent a lot of time, probably a good 1.5, 2 years doing that kind of stuff. And then sort of sat down and started figuring out the kind of gameplay that we wanted to do. And, starting from that point of, the basis being Command and Conquer, and sort of evolving from there. And we sort of said, well, you know what, when we played, some of these Command and Conquer games, I think a lot of the Tiberian Sun and Red Alert games had random map generators built into them, so you could sort of do the parameters, and it would sort of build a seed and generate this map for you. And we sort of said in our conversations, well, I always took that city slider and turned it all the way up because I wanted to have city combat. I wanted to drive my tanks through the city and that kind of stuff. And so we said, well, if that's what we want, why don't we just have the entire game take place in cities? And from there it became, okay, well, now we need to sort of figure out how we're going to do a map editor for cities. We had spent 2 years kind of building this thing that had deformable terrain and real-time texture painting on the terrain. It was actually pretty spiffy. It drew a lot of inspiration from StarCraft 2's map editor.
And now we don't use it at all.
And that literally, we said, okay, let's throw that out and kind of start all over again. So now we sort of have this system where we have tiles that snap together like Legos. And you can build these maps that don't have to be square or rectangular, and they can have holes in the middle of them and all kinds of stuff. So it works out better. I think it's a more interesting environment. I think it's more interesting from an art perspective, and from a map design perspective. I just think it's better overall.
Yeah, it's to talk about the game, it's kind of like where a lot of RTS, it's not based on base building and building units, is it? It's about capturing control points, basically.
Mm-hmm.
You control territories.
Yeah, that's it.
To sort of set up map control. So all of your recruitment comes from how many territories you control, your population cap. What you can recruit in general comes from what buildings you control. And we wanted to push the building aspect, especially, and having interior combat and exterior combat. I think because both of us sort of thought it was a letdown in older RTSs where you would go into a building and it would just be a pip above the building.
Yeah.
That would be your entire presence. And it was like, that's not interesting to us. But what if we actually set it up so you could be having combat entirely indoors and outdoors? Like, there's no real break.
Yeah, which presents some pretty interesting kind of design challenges that aren't very present in RTS games. Because one of the big things in RTS games is that the scale is wacky as hell. Like, stuff is just wrong. So when you have to design and create a building that is actually to scale so that units can run around in it, you make these buildings, you're like, wow, that's actually really big. That takes up a lot of map space. This could actually be kind of challenging to figure out how to do this. Whereas before, in any typical RTS game, you would just make a building that looked cool and the scale was irrelevant. It didn't matter.
Yeah, because you never kind of went in it, and sometimes they wouldn't even bother rendering half the shape of it, I guess, because you never saw the other side of it, did you? Really, it was just one side, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Especially on some of the older ones, like the first Command and Conquer, and talking about buildings. One feature I did really like, and it's something very simple, is the way you put armed guards outside your building. And a lot of games didn't do that. When you took over a building in some other ones. I'm trying to think what the RTS game was, where it was based like it was based like modern day, and you had tanks and stuff, and you overtook buildings and they garrished them, and it was part of the core mechanic of it. But they didn't put little things like that on, where they put like armed guards on top or around it.
Yeah, that basically came out of some of the first implementations that we did of the AI, and sort of going in and playing against the AI, and just random values. That pick a random building, go capture that building, and that's how the AI worked. And what ultimately ended up happening is, as you were sort of moving your army through the map and capturing the buildings, they were just kind of coming around the back and chasing you and backcapping everything that you were taking. So we said,
it wasn't only AI though. We were doing that to each
that's
other
true. We did do it a fair amount to each other too. But we wanted to, at least, because you can't. Normally you would build base defenses or something like that, but because you can't build anything, we needed some mechanism to allow you to defend territory that you had already captured. So we sort of introduced this idea of, let's do like a passive garrison, so that once you controlled a building for a certain amount of time, these units would spawn in, and you could have different unit types on each building, and they could maybe take varying amount of times to spawn in. So you'll notice, like, on the barracks has conscripts around the bottom, and then there's grenadiers on the sort of the parapets on the roof, and they take a little bit longer to spawn in because they're a little bit stronger than the other guys, and so just the idea of like, okay, well, we have sort of this supporting force, and if the guys die, then they'll just respawn, after a certain amount of time, and if the building gets taken over, you get to see them all die simultaneously, which is kind of fun.
Yeah, I saw that a lot. I got killed a lot because that said, with my gameplay of spawning many units to kill everyone. It's something because it is that side of capturing control points and then building the units. It's a different way of playing for me.
Yeah.
As a person, so it did take me a while to get used to how to play it because it's not my normal style. I think it's the way to talk. So if people who like fast multiplayer gameplay, I think this is going to be a good RTS for them because it's very fast and it's a very quick game.
It's very different build-up.
Yeah, right. It's very quick. It does have a different build-up because you don't have that sort of quiet time in the beginning. And I think it's fast-paced, but we're trying to sort of not be as micro-intensive, APM-centric intensive as like a lot of the other, like StarCraft is obviously the king of actions per minute and that kind of stuff. And that's still fast-paced, but it's fast-paced in perhaps a different kind of way. Trying to micro units in our game doesn't really buy you much. For example, if you tell a whole bunch of your guys to attack a specific guy by right-clicking on him, they actually won't do that. They will randomly pick pseudo-randomly pick an enemy to attack. So rapidly right-clicking and microing the targets actually doesn't buy you anything. And you could actually potentially lose because they're going to continually reset that target.
That's because our game is squad-based, similar to Dawn of War,
right?
Where you spawn a squad, not individual units.
Yeah,
so
you build
you
your
don't target
spawn
individual
squad up,
units.
don't you? Like
Yeah,
you kind of build up what units you want in,
right.
And then they come into the map.
You get a max value for a squad, and you comprise it different ways with different units, and then it comes in at once.
Yeah, so it's a basic loadout mechanic where we have a base unit for each faction. So the Children of the Ancients get the Knight, the Laperian Army gets the Conscript, and you basically have 10 population slots in a squad that you can fill up with various units, but some units take more than one population slot. And then whatever you don't fill up gets backfilled with that sort of base unit. So you're always using your maximum population. It's always the worst, like if you're trying to do like a tech tree or some kind of other, build like in an RPG or something like that, and you have like 1 point left over that you can't put anywhere, and it's like, that's just infuriating. So we sort of solve that problem for you with this idea of, well, whatever population you don't use, we'll just throw this filler unit in here that is actually helpful in that they'll give you some abilities for your squad to perform, like a focus fire. We actually give you a focus fire, but it's a skill that you have to use. It's on a cooldown, and you can only use it per squad, so you can't just spam it. But they also, because the targeting is random, they give you sort of a meat shield for your more powerful units. The more sort of base units you have on the field, the less likely that the random targeting is going to pick the more powerful units. So they sort of give you a little bit of damage buffer for your bigger guys.
They also cap buildings faster,
That's true.
so there's extra benefit.
That is a good, especially when you got a capture, because there's a bank, a factory. Is there an armory sort of thing as well at the capture?
There's a workshop.
It's a workshop, yeah.
Workshop, yeah, and then
Barracks.
Yep, and then you got like a standard building, haven't you? Like there's just very standard, like flats almost, on like a block of flats.
It's a tenement building, yeah.
Yeah.
There's some stores.
And you can capture them across as well. But it's got style a bit like steampunk in my eyes anyway. When I look
Diesel
at it.
punk is sort of what we think of it as.
Yeah, that sort of word. Where you've got these like ancient worshippers and priests, and they're kind of like that old school, kind of like Warhammer as I almost see them, kind of characters, but in this universe. I don't know if that's the look you were going for. That's how I kind of.
Yeah,
I hadn't thought of that, but I like work.
It's sort of, we sort of say it's punk-ish because it's not steampunk because it's not steam.
Yeah.
Nothing's powered by steam. It is sort of diesel punk in the sort of a little more polluted aesthetic. The general idea for the world at large, incredibly briefly, is the idea that if you look at like the history of our world and you take the time frame, if you sort of were to take a slice of society around the American Civil War, so say 1860, 1880-ish, somewhere around there, and you sort of look at what the world was like there from a technological and a societal perspective, and then you compare that to the end of World War I into the 20s and 30s. So you take maybe that 50 to 70 year span of time, and you condense that down to like 5 years or 10 years. And that's sort of what has happened to this world. So basically, Laperia as a state has discovered this mineral that like changes the world. It allows them to develop all this new technology that hasn't existed before, and instead of using it for good and instead of using it to help the lives of their population, they sort of take it from a pure profit perspective. And as a governing body, they don't really care that much about their populace. So you sort of take that span in American history and you condense it down. And with that, you also condense down all sort of the societal strife that happened as a result of that. People who were really pissed off about the Industrial Revolution, that's magnified 100 times in this world.
There's mass displacement, mass environmental damage, I guess you could say, because they essentially just strip mine this resource out of the ground. So they're taking farmland like eminent domain style and just pushing people into cities and using their land, just reaping everything.
Well,
right.
Yeah, there you go. So that was a very deep story, isn't it? I was like, that is very deep, actually. I didn't think of it like that. But no, it does have that feel about it. So you've achieved that one well. I think you've achieved that feel good on it. Got how many factions? At 2 at the moment?
2, yep.
Yeah.
There, we may hint at it. They'll be the 2 playable ones. If you play the campaign, you may see some hints at a 3rd one. Maybe.
Cool. Well, I will be as saying before we start this podcast, I will be revisiting this game as we go on. To kind of when the updates go. So talk about the future of the game. Do you see it progression much more? Have you got like a time scale or a roadmap to where you want to be?
Yeah. So
public roadmap.
Yep. Yeah. So if you go onto our forum, it's what is the URL? Jeez.
I will put a link in the description.
Yeah, it's forum.mechanicalmonocle.com. It's also right on the front page of fracturedstate.net. There's a post in there that has our public roadmap. It's just a Trello roadmap, so you can see sort of the stuff that we have slotted out by version. You can see our backlog of stuff that we have to work on. And we're going to try and be as transparent as we can throughout the whole process about just the stuff that we're working on, and we want feedback from people. We want to know kind of what's working for them, what's not working. We've already, based on the feedback we've gotten from this sort of initial release, we've gotten some great stuff from people on Steam and from people on the forums, and then just watching, people make videos and the things that they're confused about, things that we could communicate better, or the ways that we want to sort of tweak some of the mechanics and some of the UI to make it clear about what's going on, and to remove even more of that micro APM centric design and just let people kind of play the game and make the high level decisions that they want to make. And
I would say it's streamlining the micro less than reducing the APM, because right now it's just clunky. We're trying to make it less.
Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah, you don't. We're trying to not have you be measured by how often you right click,
or by click on an ability and then on the spot where you want to use it.
Right, and it's more about making more intelligent decisions, or yeah.
Yeah, no, that sounds like a good way to do it. I think with early access, it is all about the transparency and keeping people involved and listening to the community.
Yep, absolutely.
There's nothing worse than a developer where they put a game on there, go, right, we've made some money, catch us later. And then you just think, why? The community's giving you the advice, it's telling you how to progress. Why aren't you taking him? And there's nothing worse than that. And I don't know if you've ever heard the game, but there's a game called Prison Architect out.
Oh yeah,
I've heard about that.
It's a semi-popular indie game that some people may have heard of. But they done that to the actually nth degree. I've never seen anyone do it so well. They've done monthly videos where they put new features on, and the forums are really active. And any developer that does that will succeed. It's just it is about keeping that up. And I'll be doing every time there's an update, I'll be doing a new video.
Cool. That sounds awesome to us.
So next update is a UI update, which will actually include a news feed or an RSS feed. So we're trying to push that direction.
Oh, cool!
As fast as possible. That should be soonish.
That'll be a useful one. And when I played it for an early access game, it was pretty solid. The AI was good. I didn't come across any glitches. Which was good.
It's good.
Which for
cool. Mission accomplished. All right. Mic drop. I am done.
Which for an early access game you cannot grumble about. And because the units kind of appear from the blackness, it's kind of almost like you're playing on a board game. I don't know if that's
there's definitely that aesthetic. Yeah. It's I think eventually we'll have sort of a different kind of background on that, but it will still be muted in terms of color palette. I think. Talk to Todd about that. I don't know. I don't make decisions about this. Again, it sort of brings that thing to the forefront. And with the idea that we went for with the aesthetic was you sort of carved out a piece of the land and then just picked it up.
Yes, I would say that's what it goes for. Put a bit of coloration around the blackness, and that's exactly that's what the feeling I had when it's like it was picked up, and that was kind of a thing. And I said I'm no good at the game, but I was asked to watch the tutorial video, which unfortunately wasn't working on that day. So I was like,
Steam kind of botched that.
Yeah,
our Steam link got botched. I don't know what happened there. But
so I was like, I'll just go in blind. This can't hurt. It hurt, but never mind. It did try. So as it goes on, I will be joining in. So keep an eye on them, because I'm usually quite constructive with things like that. It's not often.
And don't feel too bad, Tony, because I stink at it too.
Good. We should have a multiplayer game one day, and we'll record
it.
No,
it shouldn't take any more than 45 minutes to resolve. I'm sure.
Dibs on spectating.
I'll be dead within 5. It's fine.
No, I think you'll do good.
Well,
it's always fun.
But yes, you're always welcome to do that. And so I think that 15 minutes. We went a little bit over, but we'll allow it because we've got lots to talk about. So thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you for having us.
The game is on Steam now in early access. It's called Fractured State. Don't get mixed up with Fractured Space. Two totally different games.
If you see spaceships, turn around.
Yeah, you've went completely the wrong way. And it's got the mod support in there already. It's a very quick RTS if you like your RTS games, and maybe even a little bit of tabletop in there as well with its powers, you can imagine. And it'll keep developing as it goes. And get involved.
Cool. Thanks, Tony.
Catch you there.
Thanks, Tony, and thanks anyone who listened.
Goodbye.